everybody, I'm Kate Cass, and welcome to our edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about the Ducktales episode, Beaks in the Shell. An episode that is a bit of a double-edged sword as a viewer. On the one hand, the hiatus is over, and we are starting the much shorter than I think a lot of us expected trek towards the series finale of DuckTales 2017. This is essentially the beginning of the end. But it's also the Gizmo Duck episode that I've been waiting for forever, so it makes all this a bit easier for me. Traditionally, Fenton gets one focus episode per season, and his other appearances on the show tend to be supporting roles or glorified cameos. So I have been waiting and waiting and waiting for when Fenton's focus episode would come in this final season, and now we're here. So what have we got? Fenton may be patrolling the streets as Gizmo Duck at night, but also at night he's traveling to a virtual reality world he developed with Gandra D. As Fenton tries to keep this project and relationship a secret, he's cornered from all sides for answers about what he's been up to, with someone to take what he's created for themselves. When I read the premise for this episode, I had a fairly solid idea of how I thought it was going to go. I love Fenton, he's my fave, you all know this, but it's no secret that he doesn't have the best track record when it comes to thinking his actions through. He's made a lot of mistakes and misjudgments. Now that's part of the reason why I love Fenton. He messes up, but he always means well. He wants to do his best for others and usually comes through in the end. Nevertheless, when I heard the premise of Beaks in the Shell, that it was about Fenton working on something special with Gandra and trying to keep it a secret, I was expecting it to go about as well as their last date did.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal!
For the first 5 minutes, it appeared to be going in that direction, as they set up that Fenton is meeting with Gandra in secret while she's still working with Fowl. So imagine my surprise when I'm sitting there the whole time waiting for the other shoe to drop, and the moment never comes. That was kind of amazing. I personally really like seeing this episode go in a direction I wasn't expecting it to. The way they do play with the scenario really emphasizes what makes Fenton such a great character and gives us a much better look at Gandra. We'll come back to Gandra later, but where Fenton is concerned, this is a situation where his unwavering faith in perhaps not the most faithful of people actually helped make things better. No one else would have given Gandra a chance to turn things around, as we see from Huey's reaction towards her in their first couple of encounters. Given Fenton's history, I was expecting Gandra to take advantage of that for a Fowl mission or something, to hopefully some later remorse, because I kinda wanted things to work out between these crazy kids. Instead, Fenton sees Gandra's capabilities and ambition, someone else with big dreams of accomplishing a lot as a scientist, but with no one who believes in that aspiration, and that makes an impact on her and their choices. It's pretty great that Fenton's blind optimism was a good thing for once. I think it's an interesting approach to character development. A part of Fenton that didn't really go away because it's an essential part of who he is, but it's something that's evolved to work out the bugs in a sense. Fenton took an unconventional approach, essentially trusting the enemy, but he puts as much as he possibly could into consideration to build something that requires meticulous work and testing. A virtual reality program to run safe science experiments in called the Gizmo Cloud. I also love how they address almost everyone's concerns about the setup right away. Worried that Fenton is being naive again with Gandra? He's fully aware that she's a Fowl agent. Well, he's being irresponsible with dating the enemy. There's no real harm done because Gandra has been tipping Fenton off about her missions for Fowl, so she causes the least harm possible while they work on the project that can let her leave Fowl for good. You can tell they're really covering their bases here, considering most of this happened off screen, and I find that kind of amusing. In the meantime though, she's still the enemy, and because Fenton is still terrible at keeping secrets, Huey figures out what he's doing. It takes a little convincing, but thanks to Huey still being Fenton's friend and a hopeless romantic, he agrees to help him keep this a secret until they're ready to share with the world, which is going to be difficult with the next person who drops in looking for answers.
Hello, Huey.
I'm in danger!
I know Fenton's mama has had some great moments in the series up to this point, and I've praised them in past videos, but I think this story gives us a little bit of everything that makes her so great. If there's one perfect way to blend the mother and cop together, it's staging a very realistic interrogation to find out if her son is dating someone. Her actions are the perfect blend of clever, funny, and kinda badass, but the comedic edge to Officer Cabrera's actions never feel like they get to the point of being overbearing or flanderizing. It just shows off all of her character traits in a way no other episode really has up to this point. And it's the best. I love this woman. I'd say I want her to be my mom, but in some respects, she kinda is.
Mama! You're still awake? I'm your mother. I don't sleep until you do.
One part I thought was particularly interesting was how she drops the hard demeanor she's kept up to get answers to sincerely ask Huey why Fenton would keep another secret from her. It's a sad yet sweet moment of vulnerability from her. Getting an unexpected glimpse into how she must have felt all that time she knew Fenton was Gizmo Duck when he never told her. It's an area of their relationship I never thought about until now. Only downside that's probably never going to be mentioned again, but that's a conversation I'd be very interested in seeing these two have. This little escapade of secret keeping is what takes up a majority of the episode. A story trope as old as television, and thankfully not as annoying as it could have been. No, instead, it's freaking hilarious. This might be one of the funniest episodes in the series, and that's pretty impressive for an episode that doesn't have Donald in it. What really brings it all together for me is the hilarious animation work, particularly in the facial expressions, elevated even higher by the voice acting. I'm pretty sure every other line had me laughing out loud just because of how amazing the reads were. It's one of those instances where the writing and situation itself might not be the most comedic the show has had to offer, but the additions to how they're performed really brings it to another level. But the scene stealer during the shenanigans has got to be Huey. It may quickly be at the cost of his sanity, but the lengths Huey is willing to go to help Fenton out is hilariously admirable. He's basically Gizmo Duck's honorary sidekick at this point. He also gave us this gem of a visual gag. I had no idea you could manifest a meter for that. I wonder how mine looks. Huh. Not as bad as I thought. Wait, aren't we coming up on a year of quarantine? There it is. One of this episode's strains is definitely those extra touches. As someone who is a huge fan of team science episodes, there were a lot of little details in this one that really stood out to me. With stuff like Gyro calling Fenton Dr. Intern and later getting locked in the closet again. Fenton putting on the Gizmo Duck voice, even out of uniform to keep up appearances when Huey catches him with Gandra, and his office still being in the bathroom. But it seems to be bigger now. Maybe there were renovations after the lab was flooded. And the unforgettable moments of Louie pretending to be Huey. Not only is that a fun callback to the last time Louie did that, and the animators did a really good job at keeping Louie's body language while not being really obvious about it to the point that I didn't even notice on my first watch, but I loved his reaction to finding out Fenton is Gizmo Duck. I completely forgot he didn't know. Though Fenton's love life isn't the only thing in danger of being exposed to the world, because guess who decided to join the chat? Beaks is back. I'm not the only one who's noticed that season 3 of Ducktales has kind of been neglecting their series' regular villains to make room for everything going on with Fowl. Mark Beaks has only made 2 barely noteworthy appearances in the season up to this point, but it's pretty clever that in this case, there's an in-universe explanation for why that is, because no one's talking about him. His influencer status has been diminished by his lack of innovation and generally being a living PR disaster. They're developing this arc of self-destruction with Mark Beaks. It plays on the common criticism with supervillains that they could accomplish a lot if they weren't obsessed with this one thing they keep pursuing that destroys their progress even more. With Beaks becoming so obsessed with stealing others' ideas, particularly the gizmo tech, that people have taken notice and pushed him into yesterday's news territory. Which is for the best because he's still the worst. At least he didn't dab this time. He follows Glomgold's method of never learning from anything ever, since his response to this realization is trying to steal Gizmo Duck's technology. The only deviation this time is planning to launch the Gizmo Cloud himself and stealing the ideas people come up with in it. I guess that's some form of innovation. So yeah, like usual, Beaks storms into Fenton's business and tries to take it for himself, leading to a pretty satisfying climax. But before we can go into that, we need to talk about all of the elements that have led up to this. And you might have noticed that there was one character that I haven't really talked about much, Gandra. Anyone who saw my review of the dangerous chemistry of Gandra D knows that Gandra took me a bit of time to really figure out. I believe that her biggest obstacle was figuring out what her responsibility as a scientist is instead of judging everyone else's choices. A hurdle that only seemed to get larger after it was revealed that she was a Fowl agent. This fault in Gandra's character partly contributed to how I thought this episode episode was going to go. Surprisingly, finding a kindred spirit in Fenton was enough to turn herself around, accept responsibility for her actions, and learn to work around the situation she got herself into by joining Fowl. It's been theorized for a while that Gandra has a tragic past based around her scientific work being misunderstood. While it was a pretty cool theory, I thought it was just fans being fans, looking for deeper tragedy to sympathize with Gandra where it didn't really exist. But then this episode comes along and gives us Gandra's tragic, sympathetic backstory about 5 minutes in. I cannot believe that so many people were right about that. This is a really unpredictable episode for me. Can you tell? We get a much more vulnerable look at Gandra here, and her experiences trying to innovate and push boundaries only to be pushed aside because nobody saw its value. Learning all this really made me understand her actions in the show a lot better. That I only work for myself attitude is really just one giant coping mechanism. A persona to hide that doubt in her ability to contribute something people would see as worthwhile, because no one believed in her or appreciated her contributions before. Then Fenton came along. Fenton believed in the things Gandra wanted to achieve and saw how brilliant she was. It's that faith Fenton has in what Gandra is capable of that helps her fight against her own doubts slightly and work to create an ambitious and hopefully successful project that will give her the resources she needs to quit Fowl. Like with Beaks, she didn't care what Fowl stood for. She was using them for their resources because no one else would fund her work.
Why the only people who would fund my work are villains who don't care how much destruction I cause.
And I know some fans, including myself, found that line explaining that a bit contradictory with Fowl's mission statement, but I think we can all agree that Gandra's level of destruction is far more efficient than some of the other agents in Fowl. I think it was just an issue with the phrasing. After her introduction episode, I asked what Gandra was willing to do to get what she wants. Well, as it turns out, she's willing to take a hard look at herself, develop a healthy and mutually respectful relationship with Fenton, and take the steps to build what she wants for herself in a way that won't hurt innocent people. That's way more character development than I was expecting, honestly. Beaks in the show really changed how I saw Gandra, while still lining up with what we've seen of her before. I also would not have guessed that Fenton and Gandra would make such a great couple. Don't get me wrong, I was rooting for them, but I didn't expect them to be this committed at this point, and to be so, well, cute. Gandra overcoming her own insecurities and trusting people with this virtual world she created with Fenton plays a significant part in the final conflict. As Mark Beaks seizes the Gizmo Cloud for himself, Fenton and Gandra decide what they need here is reinforcements. Yes, it's cool to see all these characters come together to take down this douche Beak, but it also does a pretty great job tying up all the parts that have been moving around chaotically during the story. The biggest being Fenton trying to convince Gandra that telling others about them and the Gizmo Cloud would help them polish out some bugs they've been having. Understanding her hesitations, but knowing that the most game-changing inventions are brought about through collaboration. It makes sense when you think about it. Teamwork has been a part of Fenton's approach to his work since the beginning. Remember, the original purpose for the Gizmo suit was to help with science experiments, but in a moment of necessity, Fenton repurposed it to save others. Huey was the first one to believe he could be a hero, and then rewired the suit to become almost symbiotic with Fenton. Then Fentonium was able to become strong and stable thanks to Gandra's additions to Fenton's formula. Even his missteps are attached to that approach, like posting Gyro's plans on the internet to crowdsource a solution since they couldn't find one, or when he wanted Boyd to team up with him to fight crime. Fenton is a capable, dedicated, and determined character, but he wouldn't have gotten where he is now and earned as much success as he has over the course of the series without the contributions of those around him, and he knows that. So now in the Gizmo Cloud, that collaborative spirit takes on the coolest form ever. I don't even know if I have the words for what an awesome idea this is. Everyone Gizmo suiting up is amazing and something I didn't know I needed so badly in my life. The designs are perfect too. You can tell they put a lot of thought into these instead of making them all carbon copies of Gizmo Duck. They make quite the impression in such a short amount of screen time. But did Huey's long legs have to make a comeback?
Why, Huey? Why? Why, Huey? Why?
Wait, what?
Well, at least Fenton seems to be happy for him. That was kinda cute. Meanwhile, Beaks keeps stealing their ideas and upgrades for himself, which is bad at first, but it shows how much he lacks his own sense of innovation. The guy can't even make an original hoverboard design. Despite how intimidating he tries to be, he becomes less of a threat over the battle because he doesn't come up with anything himself, so there's nothing he can throw at them that they can't predict. Innovation and collaboration defeat someone who steals for the sake of his own success rather than earning it. It's an awesome final showdown. Creative, fun, action-packed, and like I said, ties into the themes of the episode rather smoothly. How progress can be made through outreach and ambition. I'd be prepared to say it's one of the most well thought out climaxes in the entire series. Plus it has a lot of those extra bits of attention to the interactions with the characters that I yet again appreciate. Like how Fenton calls Gandra suit when she dons her gizmo suit, or how Gyro tries to hide how amazed he is with the gizmo cloud, or the fact that Fenton's mama takes an instant liking to Gandra after they're properly introduced. Again, I would not have guessed, but I am totally on board with. As the episode wraps up, it really does feel like all is well. Until Bradford comes in and ruins everything by denying Gandra's request to leave Fowl and locks her away. Don't worry, I'm sure she's fine. We'll just add this to the pile of things to be resolved in that 90-minute series finale. In the meantime, overall, Beaks in the Shell is a chaotic ride, but a very well put together episode. As I've expressed several times during this review, I had a pretty clear idea of where I thought this episode was going to go, basically being a retread of the dangerous chemistry of Gandra D. But even though I was looking forward to this episode immensely, even when I thought it was going to be predictable, I was even more overjoyed to see it go in the direction of progress and development. On the surface, it's a very entertaining episode, with a witty script, fabulous voice acting, very expressive and creative animation work, with an awesome action set piece as the cherry on top. But it's an adventure that gets even richer when every single character here delivers such a memorable experience. As a big fan of Fenton, this is really his time to shine. It displays what's always made him so great while showing how much he's grown. He still messes up because he's Fenton and we can't have shenanigans without mistakes, but I think this adventure showed what makes Fenton a great scientist, an understanding hero, and just an all-around good guy. Amplified by how his relationship with Gandra is presented. It adds more dimensions to her character while making her arc and development believable, despite the catalyst for it possibly happening off-screen. It depends on how much Gandra's new past started back in season 2. Stories like this are why I'm against the whole attitude that characters who have done bad things don't deserve or are capable of redemption or receiving forgiveness. Sometimes people just don't see another way at life, and when a brighter, more fulfilling path is laid out for them, they should be allowed the chance to make a change. This is everything I could have wanted from a season 3 Gizmo Duck episode, even if I couldn't really predict it. It utilized every tool in its kit to its full potential. You can bet it's going to be an episode that I will be revisiting many times in the future. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Hey, guess what? I'm doing end cards now. Thank you guys so much for checking out this review. Be sure to give it a like if you, well, liked it, and let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments. That's why this series is called Let's Talk About. I also have a Patreon now where there are amazing patrons supporting this content, including David L. Sproul and Sebastian Canino of Cinemageddon Reviews. If you'd like to join these awesome people in supporting the channel and receive some cool exclusive perks, check out the link in the description to my Patreon and all my social media links as well if you'd like to follow me on any of those. Again, thank you guys for watching, and again, see you next time.